The night had stretched long, but he continued stalking across an open field. He has been walking for 3 days, stopping only to drink from the stream or to tend to the blisters that have crept across his feet. Perhaps the village merchant sent him the wrong way. Seemed unlikely, though. The man was terrified. Kazan had thrown him through the stall, smashed his head through the table, demanded to know who had bought the salvaged armor. The merchant was lucky Kazan had let him live. Should this end up a fool's errand, that decision will certainly be overturned. The thin haze of early morning mist gives way and reveals another village, surrounded by farmland. The sun peeks furtively over the crops. This must be the place. The hardest working farmers tend to their fields silently, barely raising their heads as he walks past them. These men are not the imposters. They work the land, same as they always have, racing the sun to take their harvests before the heat can oppress. He stops next to one. Where are they? The man points to a stable near the center of the village. Kazan nods. Voices the barest of acknowledgments and continues walking. From this distance, Kazan can make out only vague shapes of men. He strides in their direction. As they come into focus, hate boils up inside Kazan. The men sit in chairs, empty jugs by their hands, sleeping gracelessly, their stomachs filled with gains extorted from their own. The smaller of the men still wears a kusasari around his waist, even as he sleeps. The larger one wakes as he stomps towards them, fumbles for a weapon, finds only one of the jugs. He holds it up as if to hide behind it. Without hesitation, Kazan strikes both the jug and the man's head with his kanabo, shattering them both instantly. The smaller one comes to and falls to his knees, immediately apologizing, begging for his life. Seeing this man in the armor of his fallen brothers, a cruel mockery of the purpose he had proudly committed his life to, creates a pit in Kazan's stomach. He lashes out, not once, like with the first one. He lashes out over and over. There is no grace in these strikes. He strikes aggressively, sloppily, across the body, the head, the legs. He hears screams as women and children wake and come out of their homes, and he stops. As he stops, he realizes the voice he hears screaming loudest is his own. He strips the armor from the formless, broken mass below him and places it in a bag and begins walking back. The farmers, who looked up briefly from their back-breaking work, return their focus to the soil. Perhaps his reputation had preceded him, or perhaps they had been tipped off. But this time, they were ready for him. The river, upon which this village sat, usually rushing and vibrant, seemed almost as if it sat still, holding its breath. Dark clouds hung on the horizon the entire day, refusing to approach, waiting for some resolution. Nearly a dozen men, dressed in broken and incomplete sets of armor, some armed with swords, others with plows and hoes, stand in a crooked line in front of him. They stand aggressively, but awkwardly, their confused stances betraying their inexperience. Kazan plants his feet across the river from them, grips his kanabo firmly, lowers it to his waist, and waits. Stares through his mask at the men. Waits. They rush him, disorganized, terrified. He fells them one by one. No wasted movement. Their attacks do not touch him. One after another, they run up against his weapon and crumble, bleeding, in the water. He stands there long after they have fallen, feet still planted, Around his ankles, the river begins to flow. 11 tendrils of crimson stretch down the river. The clouds finally crack open as cold, heavy rain sets in. Then, suddenly, pain. His calf muscle twitches as he feels cold metal pierce a small gap in his leg plates. He turns. A boy, perhaps 18, stands there, his face resolute. No stolen armor, no stolen weapon. Tears dot his cheeks, obscured by rain, but he shows no fear. The boy pulls the rake from Kazan's leg and raises it, mimicking the stance of a true samurai. Kazan grabs the head of the rake, squeezes. He feels hot blood run down his wrist as it plants in his palm. He stares the boy down, but the boy does not wince. Die, Oni. Oni? The word shakes him. Me? Why would this boy call me Oni? He feels that familiar feeling beginning to bubble deep within his chest again, like it did with the imposters. He tears the rake from the boy's hand, tosses it in the river. Leave, boy. Call me that again, and you'll die like they did. Shuzo holds up a book in front of Kazan. Kazan squints at its cover, trying to make sense of the strange characters on it. I found this in my son's belongings. Is it from the foreigners? Yes. Kazan sneers and turns away. Why would you allow such a thing in your home? He was hiding it from me, Kazan. His friends have been trying to learn their language, to work with them, trade with them. What next? Will he want to leave with them? Go abroad? Shuzo tosses the book behind him in disgust. I've heard a group of the traders are circumventing the shogun's tariffs, falsifying records, bringing in more than allowed, and moving the surplus at night. Something needs to be done about this. Kazan stares into his teacup, deep in thought. Shuzo has always been a reliable source, a friend even, at times. But trade with foreigners? What did he know about that? What would you have me do, Shuzo? Shuzo shrinks back, nervous. I'm just telling you what I heard. Someone needs to do something. The late summer sun hangs lazily over Nagasaki. Kazan stands on the shore, watching the ships of the foreign trading company dock in Najima. The workers move at a frenetic pace, loading and unloading the ships, eager to work after months of waiting. Clerks zip from place to place, counting and recording inventories. To the untrained eye, it seems chaotic, unknowable. But Kazan has been training his eye. One ship in particular stuck out. While the others would dock, unload, load, and dock, one stayed longer than the others. And he was sure he saw it unload and load twice. Once at day and once at night. And it didn't leave. Perhaps everyone was too busy to pay it any mind. Perhaps nobody wanted to be the one who raised the issue. Perhaps they were all in on it. Kazan thinks of Shuzo's son, so enthusiastic to learn about the foreigners. He thinks of his own son, whose own interest waned in the way of the sword after his injury. Would he one day be seduced by this way of life as well? Kazan looks at his hand and realizes it's balled into a tight fist, his knuckles pale and stiff. If these men are criminals, they will face justice tonight. Kazan trudges through the barren, rocky floors of this strange realm. He tries to focus on the muddled fragments of his memory, about himself, about his family, about his country. But the fog shifts and churns, and his memories too shift and churn, never feeling real or complete. He knows he is following something, or chasing it, perhaps, but he does not know what it is. It's been hours, maybe days, years. It's impossible to tell in this realm. But he knows he must catch what he is chasing. It will have answers. The fog thins ahead of him, and he sees a man on the ground, hurt, dragging his injured body away from him. Kazan accelerates, closing on the broken body. It wears armor, a samurai's armor. Another impostor, perhaps. As he nears, the man turns to face him, and Kazan freezes. The mask on this man's face. It is a mask of his father's face, but is battered and crushed. It looks just like his father did, barely recognizable but immediately identifiable. How? The man raises his hand and places it on the mask and begins to pull. The mask resists, stuck to his face. He screams in agony, the sound of flesh ripping. Kazan reaches out to stop him, grabs his arm, but it's too late. With a gruesome tear, the mask comes flying off. A black void. A prolonged scream emanates from the hole in its head. His father's voice, perhaps? He can't remember anymore. The fog encroaches again. The screaming finally stops. The man is gone. His father is gone. The moment replayed in his mind again and again. The briefest moment, a hesitation. It made no sense. The samurai, clearly superior in technique, hesitated. Kazan should be dead, but instead he left an opening. He recalled striking the samurai, shattering his helmet, seeing his face, recognizing it. And now he looks at it, in the moment, right now, drained of all life. His father is dead, killed because he hesitated. As if he let Kazan win. Kazan turns, unable to bear the shame, stares at the ground behind him, at his hands, the hands that did not hesitate. His father had known it was him. Had I known it was my father, would I have hesitated? The shame worms and burrows its way through him. He knows he would not have hesitated. He fought to bring honor back to his name, to his household, and he would fight, will kill anyone to achieve that goal, kill anyone who stood in his way, kill his household to restore his household. It made no sense. He stands there for what feels like an eternity, trying to reconcile it. He cannot. Through his tears, he thinks he sees the ground shifting underneath him. No, not shifting. A fog of some kind. He blinks back the tears and turns around to see the fog has settled all around him, obscuring his father's body. He screams, waves his kanabo. He crawls over to where his father lay. But his father is no longer there. The fog recedes and disappears, and with it, his father.